Okay. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. That's better. I would like to welcome you all today, this morning, to the third series of the Eminent Persons Forum that's going to discuss the topic titled The Future of Mining. But before we get started, I would like us all to please be upstanding for the national anthem. Please remain upstanding for the prayer.
Shall we pray? Our kind and loving Father, we just want to say thank you for this day. Thank you, Lord, for the gift of life and making it possible for each and every one of us to make it to this day. We commit this third series of the Eminent Persons Forum in your hands. Indeed, you are a faithful and merciful God for seeing it this far. We ask that your presence may be with us, that this, Lord, will bring many more successes to Zipa and to all the invited guests. Be with us now until the end of the program. In Jesus' mighty name we've prayed. Amen.
We can be seated. I would like to again welcome you all to today's program that's hosted by the Zambia Institute for Policy Analysis and Research, called the Eminent Persons Forum, which is going to focus on the topic, the future of mining. My name is Nazir Pando. And I'm going to choose a very nice name here. I'm going to be your director of ceremonies. So if you'd like my attention, just please say director, and I will come straight to you. At this point, I would like to welcome our executive director, Dr. Herrick Mpuku, to give his welcoming remarks.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm trying to test the mic to see if it is working. Sometimes you may start talking and find after 5 minutes you've just been talking to yourself. So let me be sure. Good morning once again. Okay. Let me begin by recognizing our guest speaker, Dr. Sixtus Mulenga. Let me also recognize the presence of the Permanent Secretary from the Ministry of Mines, Dr. Penga Kabeta, our panelists, all government officials present, chief executive officers from various institutions. Let me just say, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and following all protocol. It is my honor and privilege to welcome you all to the third edition of our Eminent Persons Forum. You will know that this is a series of lectures which commenced in June 2023 and is intended to draw upon the pool of local expertise and experience to shed light on topical issues which emanate in our society. In this regard, we invite individuals who are accomplished and seasoned in their fields to discuss selected topics which we believe can significantly impact the policy space. We also invite a cross-section of our stakeholders and beyond to engage with our speaker so that we bring out salient issues relevant to policy formation. In terms of a brief background, the first EPF lecture focused on debt restructuring. It was held in June 2023. And the second one was on agricultural development. It was held a little later. So what we are doing today is a third lecture. So here, following on identifying the key issues which arise in the policy space, we've talked about debt restructuring. When we did the debt restructuring, it was just before the announcement was made that a deal had been reached. We picked also on agriculture because we know as we debate the future of mining, the future of manufacturing, the future of various sectors, agriculture will play a dominant role. So we said, let's discuss this issue and look at what are the outstanding matters there. So this morning we are focusing on the future of mining in Zambia, and we say we are taking a practitioner's perspective. We are all aware that Zambia is a country which is well endowed in natural resources, making this country potentially very rich. People say this country is very rich, but the people are poor. It is our considered view, just as others have argued in the past, that this country has not adequately benefited from the great resource endowments it has. As with many other countries, the debate has raged whether our countries, our African countries, our developing countries are benefiting from the resource endowments they have. I'll give you just one point. Recently, in terms of the political turmoil which took place in West Africa, in particular Niger, it was identified that Niger was exporting uranium to France at less than $1. When there was political change, they realized that the value of that uranium was probably $200, and that's the price they imposed. Now, can you imagine over the many years that they've been exploiting that uranium, how much loss of revenue a country like Niger has lost? And Niger is one of the poorest countries in Africa. Yet, it was subsidizing the former colonial master, France. These are the issues which we need to interrogate. So, we say that this system through which we sell our minerals, the international system has been faulty, and the global system has not been favorable to the resource-rich countries to the detriment of their populations. It is therefore incumbent upon us to explore the challenges that we have faced and continue to face in this regard, and consider potential remedies. The mining sector, being the biggest generator for the Zambia's export revenue and domestic revenue mobilization, still largely remains understandably a matter of abiding concern. The sector accounts for 15% of Zambia's gross domestic product, 75% of its export earnings, and 30% of its domestic revenue collections. These are undoubtedly significant numbers that show the significance of this sector to Zambia's economic prospects. This lopsidedness has been an enduring feature of the Zambian economy for generations, for a long time. So the lopsidedness and the impact that it has on the future of the economy is self-evident from the history of the last 40, 50 years. In more recent time, in 2021, in response to some of these challenges, the Zambian government set an ambitious target of producing 3 million metric tons by 2032, with the expectation that this would spearhead Zambia's economic drive to sustainability. However, we are still faced with enormous challenges that delay this process further. Challenges in copper production dwindling, gold production decreasing, gems production also following suit, and the ever-growing artisan and small-scale miners in the informal sector who have never really received adequate support. Nevertheless, we have seen progress by the government in addressing some of these key challenges over the last 2 years. Government has aimed at stabilizing mining policies and the mining fiscal regime to restore calm in the mining sector and commit to establishing a fair, stable, and predictable tax policy. Let me just say a fair, stable, and predictable policy environment. Stability in the mining sector achieves many goals, but significantly, it restores investor confidence in the sector, further attracting new and reinvestment in the industry, resulting in higher economic growth, increased accrual of foreign exchange earnings, and greater employment for the citizenry. Furthermore, the government has pronounced that it will invest in geophysical surveys and enhance exploration countrywide to aid in the mapping of the country's natural resources, to fully appreciate, understand, and be able to plan for the full exploitation of the country's mineral pool. Recently, the thorny and long-lasting problematic difficulty of Konkola copper mine and Mopani copper mines presented challenges to stability and confidence in the sector. Happily, we have since been made aware of the ending of the dispute between ZCCM IH and Vedanta and agreement to settle this issue outside of court. This is a significant step in bringing about the much needed stability and potential for reviving the copper belt economy and the country as a whole. In the case of Mopani, we strongly urge the government to take strident steps towards resolving this issue in the quickest possible time. This also should unlock the much needed potential to spearhead the production of our mineral outputs, spurring economic growth and raising incomes and employment required to push this country out of its poverty levels. So in tackling the challenges of the mining sector, we have called upon a luminary in the mining sector to help us unpack these issues and point the way forward for the future of mining in this country. This is an individual with a passion and expertise in the field. I had the opportunity of engaging our guest of honor yesterday evening to go through some of the issues. You cannot help but be infected by the level of passion and dynamism and enthusiasm which the guest speaker has for this subject. So I hope that we shall see this vibrancy coming through. Our guest of honor, Dr. Sixtus C Mulenga, is an award-winning mining geologist with over 45 years experience domestically and globally in the mining industry, and renowned for his technical expertise, hands-on leadership, and strong government and stakeholder relationships. He is a founding member of the Zambia Chamber of Mines and the Zambia Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. As an award winner for the Zambia Chamber of Mines President's Award for this year, this clearly recognizes Dr. Mulenga's achievements in the mining industry, both as an entrepreneur and extractive industry expert, being the founder and executive chairman of Musamu Resources, and is also chairman of the board of directors for Kagem Mining, amongst other board memberships. When always there are trying to introduce an eminent person, the CV tends to be very long, so you have to brace yourself for maybe another hour of reading out the CV. But I'll spare you for today. We'll focus more on the issues of today. Now, one other thing I would add, at national and international levels, Dr. Mulenga has provided mining consultancy and technical advisory services to the government of Zambia and the World Bank. He's also a past member of the World Bank Group, Extractive Industries Advisory Group, or the International Finance Corporation, stationed in Washington. He's also a member of the World Bank External Selection Committee, appointed by the World Bank President. I have cut out a lot of things, as I mentioned. There are a lot of things which I had to cut out, and it was a struggle to see what to remove without doing injustice to Dr. Mulenga's strong credentials. In terms of qualification, Dr. Mulenga holds a doctorate degree in geology and a Master of Science in Engineering Geology from the Royal School of Mines, Imperial College of Science, Technology and Medicine in the UK. He also has a Bachelor of Science with honors in geology from the North London Polytechnic. I'm sure you will agree with me that Dr. Mulenga is an eminent person who is well placed to provide us with the sound and credible opinions we need to shape our thought processes around the future of mining in Zambia. What we've also done, to assist Dr. Mulenga unpack these issues around the theme and provide further perspective, we've also called a panel of distinguished experts. Mr. Sokwani Chilembo is a Chief Executive Officer of the Zambia Chamber of Mines and a graduate of the University of Birmingham. I remember I used to be at the University of Birmingham one time. I remember seeing Mr. Chilembo there also. If I'm not mistaken, I'm sure he's the same person. Then we have Mr. Wilfred Katoto. He's a retired. He says he retired 4 years ago. Should I say retired? Is it okay? So I can say retired. Okay. He's a retired senior manager of ZCCM and Konkola Copper Mines. He's a metallurgist by profession and a graduate from the University of Zambia, School of Mines. I hate to say last but not least. I should have started with the last person I'm mentioning because not for me to be politically correct. But I hope all is forgiven. I don't want to say the last person. Okay. The next person is Dr. Agatha Mulenga, the gender specialist at US Revenue for Growth Project. She's a graduate from a university in Germany. She has been trying to teach me how to pronounce it, but I don't think we had enough time to tutor that. But she did a postdoc at Bad College in Germany. So, for the purpose of, those of you might be asking, you said Dr. Agatha Mulenga, Dr. Sixtus Mulenga, those of you like to do your mathematics, maybe they say, are they related? Is there some kind of nepotism here? I want to assure you there is no relationship between Dr. Sixtus Mulenga and Dr. Agatha Mulenga. It's just a coincidence of names. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my singular honor and privilege to present our eminent person for this morning, Dr. Sixtus Mulenga. Thank you.
May I have the slide, please? First of all, I would like to observe all protocols, and on that note also, I would like to take the opportunity to thank my daughter Taza for being next to me as I give this presentation. She's an environmentalist with the KCM. So she's following Daddy's footsteps in the extractive industry. I would like to, next slide please. We don't have a pointer here, so we'll do everything manual. So first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Mpuku and his team at ZIPA for giving me this opportunity to share my ideas about the future of our mining industry. I feel greatly honored and I feel very humbled. I'm very grateful for this. It's a privilege because Zambia has got a lot of more eminent people than me, but I've been chosen to be one. I'm grateful. Secondly, I would like to thank the President of the Republic of Zambia, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, and his government for creating an enabling environment in which local experts are able to sit and discuss matters of how we develop our country. And today, our focus is on mining, which is a very passionate subject for me because my whole life has just been mining. That's the only thing I know. Everything else I don't. Next slide. Next slide. To give you a perspective, I thought it's important I share with you how this discussion is going to be. First of all, I must emphasize that we are here to share ideas. I'm not the single expert. We are all experts as we sit here. It's a moment to reflect, a moment to discuss, a moment to crystallize where we want to be. And doing that in my simple way, I've put up a format of the presentation. We'll start with what we have first. The mineral resource endowment and expected benefits. Then I'll give a brief overview, history of the development of our mining industry. Then how does our mining industry relate to the global business structure? It's very important because we are not an island, we live in the global market. And then what is our vision as encapsulated in Vision 2030? Then how has our mining industry performance and contribution to the economy? We can judge. Dr. Mpuku talked about we're a poor nation but a rich in resourced endowed country. We have to talk about that and see how have we been able to benefit or not benefited. And then the global commodity supply, the demand cycle, because we are tied to that. Then the business of mining. One of the biggest challenges is most people who are not in the mining industry don't understand the business of mining. So I want to spend some time and explain the uniqueness of the mining business. Then the target that our government now has given that we should produce, as an example, plus 3 million tons of copper. How doable is that? Then, very important, mineral exploration for the future. Then the new buzzword now, critical minerals, green economy. How are we going to adapt? What sort of industry are we going to create? And how will the Zambian be? How will Zambia be? And you'll see how rosy it's going to be if we do certain things properly. Then for us in mining, it's all about action. So I've listed out what I call an action plan and policies that we should put in place to achieve that future. And then I'll end up with giving what I perceive the future outlook would be. So that's the theme. So we start now. Slide 1, please. Now you need to keep on clicking until everything comes out. All the way to the bottom. That's it. I want you to think about the natural resource endowment we have. What do we have? We have minerals, and these minerals belong to the Zambian people. That's a starting point. The minerals we have, the mineral resource, belong to the Zambian people. The government is a custodian of the minerals resource endowment for the people of Zambia. The mining companies that come to Zambia are service providers. They are our partners in creating wealth from this resource endowment that we have. And therefore, given that resource endowment, it means we must use this resource to create wealth, to create the life we live. Since we Zambians are very religious people, God loves Zambia. Let me tell you this. Of all the countries, he put everything here. But look how we are. Have we really used that? And we have to think from a point of view, converting the resources into wealth for the betterment and improvement of lifestyle and raising the standard of living. And what are we talking about? We are talking about being able to provide clean water, piped water, shelter, food, basic things that the millennium goals. What is the language? The millennium stuff. Educate me. Yeah, sustainable development goals. God already created it in Zambia. We've just been sleeping. So that is the reason. So the Minister of Mines has been very concerned about small scale, large scale, what scale. We must create an industry, a mineral resource industry that is encompassing everybody, small scale, medium, large. And that's how the global world, the developed world has developed. So we should pursue models which make the most of the national, our endowment. We must optimize the funds so that we are able to use them for development. And the most point of view, we are answerable to the Zambian people. So that is the setting. So as I give this presentation, as we walk through this, what we are going to do, I want you in the background to ask yourself, have we used the natural resources for the benefit of ourselves and the future generation? That's what I would like you to have. Question yourselves that way. 2, you must have in your background that we are accountable to the Zambian people. Transparency is the key. The Zambian people are entitled to know what they own, what value it is, and how we make wealth out of it. Next slide. So I've set the scene there. Now, just as a summary, most of you know this, we are endowed with world-class mineral resources. We have base metals, which is how our mining industry started. I've listed there just a few, copper, cobalt, as you can see. We have ferrous metals, manganese and iron. That can create a big industry, steel industry, which would be the engine for development. We have energy minerals, coal and uranium in southern province mainly. Then the new buzzword now with these critical minerals, the new buzzword is this green economy. I want to pause there. Why are we going green? We are going green because the planet Earth is heating up. It's heating up. You have noticed the temperatures now. They are abnormal. Zambia to have temperatures plus 40 degrees is very abnormal. So the world is heating up. So now the question we have as a challenge as human beings, how are we going to cool it down? So we are going to cool it down using critical minerals. Just like I said, God loves us. He chose Zambia to put critical minerals, to be a country which will help to cool the world. We must clap. Can we clap, please? But having given that critical minerals, God expects us to be responsible. He expects us to be responsible for the benefit of Zambians. Zambians must benefit, must become wealthier. We are too poor. We should be rich. Examples in the mineral resource endowed countries, the Middle East, the Far East, US, they've used resources to develop themselves. Then we have industrial minerals. The whole economy of the Western world has grown on best use of industrial minerals. You go to every town, you heard I was educated in England, in UK. Every little town you go to and city, you see people mining industrial minerals and making things. That's how the economy goes. We don't do that in this country. So we need to change. Our mind has to change. Then, of course, precious metals. The joke about Zambia is that we are told the small-scale mine and artisanal are the best geologists because they are the ones who tell us where gold is. So that's all natural endowment. How do we take that? Then we have the colored gemstones, emeralds, amethyst, and so on. What value are we getting from them? And as if there's not enough, God also give us a potential. There's potential here for oil and gas on the Rift Valley system. Because where we sit, there's that potential. So see how well endowed we are. Next slide, please. This is just a map to show where those things are. I don't want to bore you with geology, but everything we have, like lithium, the critical minerals in Southern Province, manganese in the Central Province, Serenge, Mansa, and so on. And in a way, we could create what we'd call a manganese belt, just like our founders, Anglo-American and Ron Selection Trust, created the copper belt. In future, we can create manganese belt, covering those provinces and focus on that to industrialize. Cobalt, nickel, the latest is the first quantums. Is it Sentinel? CO for, yeah, Sentinel. We are going to have the largest nickel mine in Africa. So we move next. Now, it's very important we pause here and understand what are the expected benefits from mining industry. Given that resource, what are the expected benefits and have we gotten those benefits? So I just put one item, accelerated long-term sustainable economic development and transformation of the country through industrialization, creation of employment, tax revenue for the government, local content. Local content, I mean more of Zambian things happening in the value chain. If a company is supplying with us, supplying drill rigs in Zambia, why don't we discuss with that company and say, can you assemble these drill rigs here? We'll give a big market. And we get those to partner with a Zambian entrepreneur. That's how we get transfer of technology. Is Zambian entrepreneurs interlink and partnering with overseas partners. That's what the world is. Value addition to minerals, which I'm glad this government is very passionate about. But value addition, we must check how we value add, so that we are not just used as a stepping stone for people to make more money outside the country. So we must track that. Upward and downstream linkages in the value chain. Mine is to play the catalytic role to spur development, such as agriculture, manufacturing, construction, and infrastructure. In fact, a classic example is the Zambian copper belt as we know it. That was bush. That was elephant country. There were lions, hippos everywhere. But those daring pioneers, the Oppenheimer family and the rest, they were very daring people. They came and built heaven at that time. That's the vision we should have in Zambia, to go to new areas and create a new life, a modern life. Development of local entrepreneurs in the sector. Mining is the key sector in this country. No local entrepreneurs in it. I'm the first after 59 years. Shame on Zambia. We must feel bad. You cannot outsource your development. You must take the lead. You must take the risk. That's when we shall have sustainable development in this country. Zambians must be active investors in the mining sector, side by side with international investors. And I keep on talking about international investors because the money, the capital is in the global market. We must attract global market to come to Zambia, but on the condition that they partner with the local people so that we build a know-how, a technology transfer. Of course, attract foreign direct investment. What this government is doing very well on doing all that kind of stuff. So those are the benefits. So the question we must ask ourselves, have we done that? I want to take you back. The Middle East have developed itself from oil. The Far East countries, Singapore, Japan, Taiwan, they don't have physical assets like we have. They don't have natural endowment like we have. But they only have human beings. So they've capitalized on the brains of their people. The Japanese is a very good example, and the Singaporeans. They don't have any asset. They only have people, their own human beings. So the Japanese were very clever. They came all over the world, they picked materials and made cars and sell. And they supply the whole world with cars, but they don't have copper deposits in Japan. So a key for us is development of human capital. And develop human capital from a perspective of business. Zambia must become a business. The mining sector must be a business. So in simple language, the natural resources we have are assets. It's our inventory. How do we use this inventory now to turn it into wealth and transform the society? That's the outlook we should have. Next, please. That's a history. You are a very unique country. We're a country that has had 100 years of mining. I remember in the early days when we were young graduates with my friend, Mr. Katoto there, everybody in the Western world used to come to Zambia to learn mining. Most of the mining methods, underground mining methods, were developed in Zambia. Block caving, I'll bore you now. Block caving at Nchanga. Mechanization at Mufulira. And people used to come to Mufulira to learn how to have mechanized mines. Metallurgy, we are the first country to do solvent extraction. The Chileans came to learn from us. What went wrong? What went wrong? That's the issue. So we are the first phase, pre-independence, early independence, 70, those years you can see I've said it there. Then we nationalized, then we've privatized. So in terms of knowledge, we have all the knowledge. We've gone through all the phases. The question we have to ask ourselves, what have we learned from our experience? That is the lacking point. We don't seem to learn from our experience. We keep on doing the wrong things. But I must add now, we have a government that is doing the right things. And that's why I accepted to come and share my views today, because I feel I'm in an environment where people are listening. We can do things differently. So we have current Zambian large-scale, small-scale, and artisan. And it's very important for us to develop the whole value chain. Large-scale, medium-scale, small-scale. That's the approach we should have. I must add that large-scale mining is high capital. It requires high capital. It requires expensive technology. It requires professional staff and takes several years to achieve return on investment. Therefore, as we train our business people, we must train our business people to understand the uniqueness of mining business. Mining is not farming. It's not growing tomatoes. A few weeks it ripes and you sell. No. It's years. So the people, we must have financing people who understand that. We don't seem to pay much attention to that. Next slide. So in summary there, I'm saying we've been a producer of primary products, no value addition. And therefore what I'm saying, now we must have a paradigm shift. We must move to value addition. That's basically what I'm saying. And if we do that, we are okay. But as we do this value addition, like the manganese, we must ask ourselves, what value is the country getting from that? We have to do that. Next slide. That's a Vision 2030. I just copied as it is. It talks about sustainable, contribute to sustainable, what. But in the literature, it talks about providing water, education, good health, food, plentiful food. It's very sad. I had a friend who is late now, and he was telling me, we were in London, he was telling me, you know, the sad thing about our country, we are very happy being poor. I said, what do you mean? He said, see what we do. Everything we do leads us to poverty. Come on, can't we change things? So I said, yes, me, I will help to change. I'll stay in the mining industry. I'll stay in the mining industry, and one day I'll have my own mine so I can change. And that's what I've done. Next. This slide, for those of us in the mining, have seen it. It very clearly shows what over the 100 years plus we've gone through. We started private sector, mines, two big mining companies, Anglo, Ron Selection Trust, and at that time in the 60s, they were around the 700, 600, 800 mark. Then we nationalized the mines. So the bars are copper production per annum. I just want you to see. I know there are people who don't like graphs. Us, we like graphs. Because they tell a story. So there we are. You can see from the time we nationalized, you can see the trend down, 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 up to the time we decided that now it's time to privatize. Once we privatize, you can see the trend. But what has it taken? It has taken more than 59 years to be where we were in 1960-something. Do you call that development? The answer is no. You can't take 2 generations. I'm told the generation is 25 years. Am I right? Yeah? You can't take 2 generations to do what your ancestors did. And you call yourself you have developed. Yes, you drive fancy cars, but so what? In reality, you've been losing value as a country. And that's the reason why the Asian tigers overtook us. At the beginning, we were better than the Asian tigers. But it's this phase we went through. On the other side, it shows the percentage of world production. Here is the tons. So we're just there. Now, I want you to, next slide, please. This slide, before I speak, I would like to pay tribute and gratitude to my friend Norman Bazima. A lot of you know Norman Bazima. He's an expert in mining industry, business. He's an expert in finance and so on, but he's got a global image and understanding. And using his expertise, he crystallized the Zambian mining industry in a graph. And this graph, I want you to pay much attention. And for the first time, I'm going to move there. I hope there's no pointer here. We are just like at my primary school in Chikwanda. So the transition phase, you can see there, 1964. Then we moved into national ownership. Things went down, 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 down. Then transition phase, we started doing the privatization period there in the mid-90s, and we moved on and on and on. And then here now, this is the new mines. The black is the old mines. Now, the reason I want to spend some time on here, I want to spend time to draw your attention to say the future of Zambia lies in the emerging mines. The new frontier, Northwestern Province, the big, great work that First Quantum are doing, Lumwana, all those companies that are based in there. That's where the future is. Because the old mines, so what we need to do as a country is increase the red portion. Because the old mines on the copper belt will mature. Yes, we put in investment. We've expanded at Mopani. We have expanded the Mindola shafts, SOB, and all that we've done. At KCM, we're going to have the Konkola Deep. But those projects require huge investment. And we must be patient. They require huge investment to reach what we require. I can talk about Konkola because I was in charge of Konkola. The greater resource is world class. But that's a very difficult mine to have because you have water. You have to mine water before you mine ore. And during my time, we'll put drain drives, meaning audits or tunnels for the layman. 2 years ahead before we mine the block. Imagine the amount of investment you have to be put. So we must understand that these mines are difficult mines and they require investment, and we must be patient. We must allow the investor to work. not to torment them. Oh, we are not getting benefit. What benefit? There is no benefit. You have not created it. You can only get what you create, not what you have illusions about. So that's what I would like to share. So this slide does that. Why does it show? We go to the next slide. I'm now going to explain this slide. Next slide, please. Okay. I think I'll have to come back. But go back to that slide. I will skip what. Go back to the previous slide. Uh-huh. The reason is here we were not investing. Investment was going to other aspects of the Zambian economy. That's the bottom line. And what does it say? It means if you want to grow a sector, invest in the sector, full stop. You can do all fancy things, but you are taking value away. So during that period, our industry got weak, no investment, what, but that's a story. The good thing, we learned, and we should be happy we learned and took the action. Now we must hang on to the action and improve that action. We must make investors, both Zambians and international investors, comfortable, love Zambia. That's what we should do, because they will bring their big bucks to get things that we want to do to be done. So let's move. In 2014, the Zambia Chamber of Mines did a resource endowment study by a group called ICMM. That group does resource endowment for all countries, Chile, Tanzania, Ghana, all resources. So in Zambia, we used at that time examples of Kansanshi, Konkola, Lumwana, and Mopani. And the outcome, next slide, please, next slide, was that this is the graph. So it shows the world and Zambia. So the key parameters, foreign direct investment. In the global world, it ranges 80, sorry, my sight is not very good. The angle, is it 60 to 90, whatever. Zambia is 86%, foreign direct investment. Yeah, 60 to 90, so we are within the range, that's fine. Exports, copper accounted for 80%. If you notice, the rest of the world is 30-60%. The reason for that, we run a non-diversified economy. It's a mono economy. Zambian economy is mono, based on copper primarily. So that's why you see that in diversified economy, the figures are spread around. Government revenue, 25%. You can see it's more. Copper was counting at that time 25%, which is more than the rest of the world, the resource endowment. Why? They are diversified. Gross domestic, we're in the range, 10%, we're doing well. That is 2012. Direct employment, we were doing more, 1.7% as an indicator. So we move next, then these are there. For people, the economists know what that means. But for me, I just want to focus on employment. Mining, 2019, 2%. The reason is that as we go forward, mining is going to become more technology. Technology means less people. What we need is to develop more mines where we are using technology. Not using wheelbarrows. Those are days of my father. Next slide. The same slide, you can do that. You can see the same percentage employment and so on. Next slide. What is the structure? The structure is what I explained. During the nationalization period, we didn't have investment. Now we have investment and so on. Now, what we're now saying here, I'm going to go fast. We need the future of mining in Zambia lies in the growth of new mines. That is our future. And stabilizing the old mines. We must create an enabling environment provided by political landscape because the investor likes that. And I'm emphasizing here when I talk about investor, I'm now the mindset I want to share in your mindset is both foreign investor and local investor. Even a local investor gets affected by political instability. So it's both. It's not just for foreigners. No, it's all of us who are investors. Mining regulation has focused on incentives on operations and not exploration. We need to incentivize exploration because that's where the future comes. 2, we need to train geologists, metallurgists, mining engineers, and economics, but finance people. We don't have enough finance people who understand the business of mining. Most people we have who do our books, they just know income statement, expenditure, balance. Please, hey, we want to know the business of mining. What are the intricacies of mining? So our universities of business, like at Copperbelt University, there's a department of a school of business. At UNZA, they have a business school. Those schools must integrate with mining schools. They must do common courses so that our finance people understand mining. What is mining business? Once we do that, that's what the rest of the world has done. That's why they do better than us. So, as I said, more geologists, more geoscientists, mining engineers, all that we should do. Next slide. We live in a turmoil world. Life is real. Life is not theoretical. When it gets hot, it gets hot. When it gets cold, it gets cold. So the commodity market, over 100 years, that's what it does. I've just given an example of copper. Oil crisis, prices go up when slump comes. So all I'm saying is that it will always fluctuate. Because it always fluctuates high and low, we must always remember that mineral resources are a wasting asset. It will never come back. Once we mine the mineral, it will never come back. It depletes. So the question is, how best are we using that mineral to maximize value for development of the country? That's why I'm saying. So we should also prepare for the hard times, because the hard times will come. If there's anything that is constant, is the hard times coming. And as we move forward, there may be more harder times. So how do we structure our mining industry so that it's versatile, it's adaptable? That's what we have to think. So now I'm taking you to the 4 to 15 years. Mine development, 2 to 5 years. Mine operation, 2 to 25 years. Mine closure, 2 to 10 years. So already you are talking about over 50 years. A good example is our mines. Kabwe mine, correct me if I'm wrong, my fellow colleagues from the mining industry. Kabwe mine, Broken Hill, I think was discovered either in 1923 or 1903. But we closed it in the late 80s or somewhere there. The copper belt mines that you have, Nkana, Mufulira, what, they were discovered just before the Second World War. They are still running. Bankrupt mine, which is Konkola, in 1958, is still running. But the investor had to spend those years. Now, I want to give you an example. Me now, as an investor in mining, on the first, I'm at that phase, the first one going to the second phase. So I've spent on the first one 12 years. And I'm very proud because I've done it quicker than the norm. You see, 4 to 15, me I did 12 years. I'm better than the others. You get my point? That's a mindset we should have. I've started development, I'm just scratching. In my plan, I think it will take me 5 years, but I don't know. And all this time, you are pouring money. No revenue, no revenue. So the reality is that you can't develop a mine from your own money at the bank. It's impossible. You'll be bankrupt. You can't. So we have to think the other way, which I'm going to show. So I'll give you an example. Next slide, please. This is how it took for me. I started in 2009, and those are the things I had to go through. 2010, geological mapping, geochemistry. 2011, geophysics. 2012, ore body discovery. 3 years after I started, that's when I found an anomaly. And after that, the rest of my 9 years, I was developing the anomaly. And last year, I was graced, the president came and groundbreak. He came to groundbreak the mine in year 12. Now, since he groundbreak, I'm now developing. No revenue. So that is what we must understand. Next slide. We are talking about the 3 million tons, the advanced projects that will make us do. That's a plan there. The advanced projects. How are we going to achieve the 3 million? We are going to achieve the 3 million by doing two main things. One, stabilize the existing mines and make them produce to capacity. Second, use the new mines to expand and the new mine. That's the story I'm talking about. Next. That's the same thing. Next. We want to move from where I'll finish. It's very important. It's not the time, it's the knowledge sharing. You must have patience. I spent 12 years in the bush. You can't give me 5 minutes. So, we are now number 7. At 3 million, we'll get to number 2 to Chile. And there's a story to this. In the early 70s, Zambia was among the top copper producers. Either we were number 1 or number 2, somewhere there. And the World Mining, Global Mining Journal was doing a projection to how it would look like in year 2000. 10 of the century. How will it look like at 10 of the century? So they estimated that Zambia would be producing somewhere around 5 million tons. Then Chile, they said, if they do well, maybe 1 million, maybe 2 million. But look what has happened. Because of policies, because of what? Chile, the underdog, became the leader in the world. Zambia, who was the favorite, became the underdog. The difference is mindset. The difference is policies. The difference is thinking. What I'm appealing to everybody, we are at a prime moment with this government now to springboard development. That's where we are. Forget the past. Let's focus on the future. Next, mineral exploration. It's my favorite subject because that's what creates wealth. So, geophysics. I must confess, I went and spoke to cobalt metals since they are using high technology in exploration. I thought, can you share with me the thoughts? And they told me, high tech, it's high tech now. So that's how I created this slide. I consulted cobalt. That's one other thing we don't do very well in Zambia. We do not consult people with knowledge. We need to change. We must consult people with knowledge. Then we don't make the mistakes that we've made in the past. So the country The government now wants to do airborne geophysics, and we are delighted. Just imagine, after independence, 59 years later, that's when we wake up. Oh, we need to know what we have. It's a good thing that we have woken up. But when we get that information, let's use it properly. So we need hands-on people. We should stop these courses which just teach people how to wear ties and switch buttons on the computer. There should be more hands-on. The Western world is where they are, and China is where they are because they train people hands-on. If you meet a Chinese person, he could be a geologist, but you also be able to fix a car, to fix a truck. Zambia, no, you must go and find somebody to fix it. So we must change the way we educate our people. We must educate them to be all-rounders. Then we have a resource in the country. Next. That is the critical minerals thing I was talking about, the lithium battery things that we're going to do. And between our government and DRC government, there's an agreement that will set up economic zone in Ndola for us, and we'll start. That's the way to go. We must be daring. Start. And I'm pleased we have a government that is daring. Next. This is how the world looks like with this issue of electric battery thing. There's no single manufacturing thing in Africa. With what we are doing now, we are likely to be the first. But the question we must ask us, how are we going to ensure we are doing it the right way? We must do some source searching. Next, other sectors. I talked about other sectors. Manganese for me is underneath, apart from being part of the critical minerals, we must aggressively follow to create a steel industry in this country. Because we've got iron ore, we've got manganese, we've got nickel. The whole Western world, the Asian world. Some years back, I went to India. I went to Calcutta. There's a river, big river, which separates the city of Calcutta, old and new. Yeah. So I crossed this big river. Those people from India, is there anybody from India here? Do you know India? Yeah, there's a big river you cross. The other side, they manufacture anything you want in this earth by their hands. I went there, I spent 1 week. That's a time when I was doing issues of drill bits, drilling rigs, and I found them making drill rigs. But that is all steel. So steel, I'm sure economists will tell us, is the mother of industrialization. So if we want to be an industrialized country, we must have our own steel industry. We don't have to import steel. I'm glad our people in Kafue have made several strides in that, and we must support them. Next, gemstone sector, all I can say, let's value add. That's all I can say. And what we do there, value add is not only cutting and polishing. Value add means we must grade the gemstones. And I can give you an example as board chairman of Kajam, is that we increase the value of gemstones in Kajam from $4 per carat to over $200 per carat by just sorting and grading. Those are the things we should think about. That's what we should think about. Next, petroleum, my new favorite subject, we must explore. It's there. Zambia is part of the Great Rift Valley system. And that Great Rift system is on the other side, on the western side, is part of the Pacific Ocean basin. These two basins, deep basins, kilometers deep, they have potential. They are huge basins, they have potential. That's where the Angolans are tapping. So in western Zambia, we can tap stuff from the western basin. In northern Zambia, Lake Tanganyika, Lake Mweru, all those places, we will tap from the Great Rift Valley system. We shouldn't be scared. We should be daring. God put it there. We should move and look for it. Next. What are the steps that we should take? We must, first of all, most important, establish a data bank of mineral resources and reserve endowment. The country needs to know what it has. We must have a national mineral strategic development plan. I'm talking now to the economists. That's what we should have. We must have a data bank so that if we ask, how much copper do we have in this country? Resource or reserve? We should be able to say. How much manganese? How much iron? Everything. Right now, if you ask that question, I don't know what answer you'll get. It's strange. How can we be living by piecemeal? Even in our own homes, the wife will know how much meal is there. And will know how long it lasts. We don't know that about our minerals. Shame on us. That's what we need to go back to the fundamentals. Once we have that, this great story now we have a national country geological survey, high resolution mapping, quality geology. I would like the director of geological survey to stand and we congratulate him. Please stand. Can we clap for him? I know it may not be seen as, the PS is not here. Yes. The reason I've done this is that him, the PS, and the Minister of Mines, they are the first leaders in the Ministry of Mines to initiate a program to map the country. That is very, very important. Once we have that information, we shall be better informed. We need to develop a diverse power system to cope with the rising demand of national growth. That is being done. Government is working about creating hydro power station in the north part of Zambia, which is the Muchinga escarpment watershed. So we are on track on that. Solar mix of energy for the green economy. We need to develop, being a land-linked country, routes to the coast. Our export, the cost of exporting and importing in Zambia is exorbitantly high. Logistics costs are very high. I may just open your eyes. That's the reason why more mining. I keep on banging on this. We must have our own investors who work with the foreign investors. Zambia we want to have in future. We should, training of manpower, our universities must work hand in hand with the industry. Growth, local content. More important, everybody who comes, we invest from outside in Zambia. We use our resources to build things and make the money goes. We don't see that money. What we are saying, we must track revenue derived from exports of mineral resources, derived products, to ensure that the revenue is accounted for within the national bank. All mining companies should repatriate export revenue back in Zambia. Part of the problem we have, I want to read this so that you understand what I'm saying. It's a key element of why we have had problems in the past. All mining companies should repatriate export revenue back in Zambia and pay their overseas bills and funds externalization using their Zambian bank accounts. What we are saying here is your money is your money. We are not going to expropriate your money. But what we are saying is that whatever you make out of our resources, remember the resources belong to the Zambian people, must come in your bank account. If your bank account is in Osaka or Kitwe, Ndola, wherever it is, then from there pay your bills, pay your shareholders, pay your dividends, do everything. The government will not touch who you pay. But by having that money staying in our banks here, as you pay your bills, the global market will have a lot of confidence in Zambia, financial markets. That's the issue we should do, financial engineering. We are not establishing, I'm not saying that there should be exchange controls, what restrict. No, the investor has a right to repatriate what he has made. He can make 100% profit, it's allowed, it is money. But it must be transparent, we must see it. Promote transparency and accountability in the mining sector. Already we have Zambia Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. Let's strengthen that, the reporting mechanism. There's something here. Can you show? My brother, director. On that slide, there's number 11. Go back, please. Go back. Can you read what number 11 is? Since you read it for me. Number 11, you can't see. The last item, you can't see. Sorry, I have to read this. Okay, I will remember it. Next. The buzzword in the global market now is ESG. And Zambia has to do just that. Environment, social, governance. Investors will not invest if you are not compliant with ESG. So Zambia must put itself on the world map that it's compliant. That's basically what I'm saying. Can we move? Next slide. Next slide, I've said that. There is an example of the ESG, Rubik example. I got this from the Chamber of Mines. Basically what we are saying, sustainability, opportunity, partnership, and all that companies like to do, it's very important in the modern world, especially in the green economy. Next, I have what should, go back. This slide is very important. It talks about environmental sustainability and in community engagement. And it's very important. I'm saying that because this slide was made by my daughter. Taza, stand up, please. Come on, I'm not embarrassing you. Okay? So, environmental sustainability and community engagement, very important. Next. That's the same thing we are talking about, corporate social responsibility. Next. Now, this is something you are going to listen for the first time, most of you. It's something that, being part of the Gemfields group of UK, AJAM, which is in partnership with the government of Zambia, Gemfields owns 75%, and the government of Zambia owns 25% in Kajam. We've been thinking about transparency, and we've come up with something we are calling the G factor. G means government or people of Zambia. What are we saying? We are saying all mining companies must produce their G factor, 12% and so on and so on. The reason for this is that if you do a G factor for a group in a certain sector, let's say in copper mining, the G factor will show different numbers. The reason, it's an indicator. So if you are in a same sector and the range of G factor is, for argument's sake, 10 to 20, but we notice that there's a company whose G factor is 5. We go and ask them, hey, what's going on here? What's going on? Your G factor is very low. That will raise the eyes of the system. And we are prepared, we even shared that we can publish our figures, and this stuff should be in public domain. Ladies and gentlemen, the future we are going into is going to be run by our millennials. The millennials have a different attitude to life. They are very well informed. They like to have information. So transparency is not an option. It's going to be a requirement to survive in future. We must bear that. That's what the world requires. Next. Next slide. What are the steps? Policies. We must promote development of capital markets. Zambia has no capital markets for mining industry. As you can see, you cannot develop a mine from your savings. If you are lucky, you do it like I did, but otherwise you just die out of poverty. You have to go to the capital markets. How do we do that? I'm saying here there must be a policy that involvement of Zambians in the mining sector must be innovatively promoted. I use the word innovatively, deliberately, because we must think outside the box. So the normal thing, you find the big companies who use their balance sheet. So they do that. Capital markets in the USA. In Zambia, the point I'm trying to share here quickly is that the pension funds, the insurance funds must create venture capital. To do that, there must be a reform to these pension acts and so on. If we do that, that's what we have. We have money on the stock market and people can go and borrow and build their businesses. That's the message I'm saying there. And very important, tax regulations as usual. For us, this is mineral resources. The custodians, the people who do the work of assessing are geologists. And we are saying the government must pass the Geoscience Bill and Act so that in future only qualified people are able to say you have a reserve or no reserve. Right now, everybody is a geologist in Zambia. But we don't allow people, everybody to be a doctor, except if you are a witch doctor. You get my point? They will not allow you to be a lawyer if you are not a lawyer. They will not allow you to be an accountant if you are not part of the Chartered Institute to Zika. So the same for geologists. Don't cheat people that you know about minerals. We want a law that enforces that. Then we feel we must establish a mineral resource endowment sovereign wealth fund. Zambia has very little to show for its natural resources. Our neighbor here, Botswana, they have one of the best sovereign wealth fund from their diamonds. Why can't we do that from our own minerals? In Europe, Norway. So those are food for thought. Next. I'm about to finish. Don't worry. Okay. I talked about the data bank, National Geological, cost-effective. Let's go back. Here, what I want to talk about is implementation of the Z factor. So that G factor should be the Z factor, which means Zambia. Zambia now should be G factor plus ESG. Basically, that's what I'm saying. That is how we shall take the measure of the contribution of the mining industry to the development of Zambia. We must have parameters to measure. Next. Next. Of course, exploration. We must encourage exploration by doing those things I'm proposing there. It's very hard that you spend 12 years, you spend your money, and you can't get it back. People must get back for taking the risk. You must thank the explorer for taking the risk and finding a nobody. Next. That is how it will look like. That's the mineral industry of the future. A diverse, different mineral groups and with steel. That's the Zambia we should build in future. Next. The future outlook, it's bright. Investment in the next 7 to 10 years, $15 billion. And thank you to the government for doing that. So, what am I saying? Next, I'm about to finish now. Policies, safeguard stability, policies on national strategic minerals, consistent regulatory transparency, build mutual confidence with investors. We must make investors comfortable in our country, as well as Zambian investors. Mutual benefit for Zambians and investors, Z factor. Promote Zambian entrepreneurs. So what am I saying? In summary, in conclusion, I'm saying that we have a very bright future. We have a very bright mining industry. And the reason it's going to be bright is because God endowed us with the resources. But we must take those actions that I've shared with you. 3, we have a young population. The millennials will drive the future of this country. They are very different people. And we can trust them. Once we put all those measures in place, that Zambia mining industry will be the best, and Zambia will be better than Singapore in the future. That's where I end. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mulenga. I think after such a well thought out, well deliberated, and thought-provoking presentation by Dr. Mulenga, I think that deserves one more round of applause. And Dr. Mulenga, as Zipper, we are proud and happy to have hosted you for this lecture today. And thank you so much for your experiences and everything that you've taught us here today. I would also like to make mention that the Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Mines and Minerals Development has left, but we still have representatives here from the ministry, such as the director, who have still remained with us, so thank you very much for being with us, for continuing the program. At this point, we will move on to the next session, which is the panel discussion, which also includes a Q&A. So all those people who have questions, do not fear your questions. There will be a time for your Q&A. So I would like to invite, firstly, our moderator, Ms. Malindi Msoni, who's the Research Fellow for the Transport and Infrastructure Development at ZIPA. Next, I would like to invite our panelists. Firstly, Dr. Agatha Mulenga from the Revenue for Growth Project. Mr. Wilfred Katoto, a private consultant and heavy experience in the mining sector. Our Dean from the School of Mining from the University of Zambia, Professor Emmanuel Chanda. And we do also have another panelist who was supposed to be with us today, but due to other commitments has to leave us, who's Mr. Sokwani Chilembo from the Zambia Chamber of Mines. And these are going to be constituted as your panelists, so please, a round of applause for our panelists. Over to you, Malindi.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Mulenga, for such a comprehensive, impactful, and refreshing presentation. I'm sure the audience today, including our panelists, have a lot to say about what you've just explained to us here now. So I think a key theme that remained in my mind throughout your presentation was the emphasis on the fact that the mineral wealth that this country has is for the Zambian people. So just very quickly, before Engineer Chilembo has to go, perhaps I could ask you to comment, keeping in mind the fact that Zambians must benefit from the mineral wealth that we have. How can we strategically attract, cultivate, and encourage the participation of local Zambians in the mineral value chain?
Thank you very much. Just to make it very clear why I have come up and not spoken from the table. You heard from Dr. Mulenga earlier on stating that he was a founding member of the Zambia Chamber of Mines. And what you have seen today is a proper, clear, and complete interpretation of what on the continent is called the African mining vision, presented by a luminary. So you have a full understanding of where the Chamber of Mines comes from when it states a position. Because when you see us, all you see is a chip of the original block. And please, do not misinterpret what we say as is commonly put, arm twisting. It is not. It is simply us taking the virtues of our founding luminaries. And these virtues are discipline and dedication, such as that which Dr. Mulenga has demonstrated, which is the beginning of attaining what you are talking about having to do. This is not about shortcuts. This is about being factual, business-minded, and strategic at every stage, as Dr. Mulenga has been. In doing so, we have to do one key thing, which Dr. Mulenga has, mentioned several times here, and that is that we must have self-belief. You heard flotation extraction began here, that the Chileans came to learn it here. You have seen today that we are transforming ESG reporting with the G factor. And I'm glad to report that one of the other institutions that Dr. Mulenga founded, and which is the meeting for which I must leave, the Zambia Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, will be the first in the world to incorporate this in its reporting framework. So we must understand that we cannot be at the forefront by copying. You must be at the forefront where you are. And if you want to get that participation, the other thing you must do is be discerning. If you have players coming into the sector, well endowed or not, who do not want to participate in responsible mining as framed by founders such as Dr. Mulenga, in a manner that maintains the environment, that avoids unfair trade practices in outsourced contract mining, that ensures local skills transfer and equal business opportunity for players within the sector, then you must be discerning and ask a question, why? And hold them to account when they deviate from what we consider best practice in Zambia. Finally, we must be decided, as Dr. Mulenga has been, and not waste time. So if you want us to get a bigger stake, listen to everything that Dr. Mulenga has said. Many a time, the Chamber has advocated that local financial institutions must begin to contribute to financing explorers. Dr. Mulenga should not need to jump on a plane to get Musamu financed. It should be seeded here. It is embarrassing to jump on a plane for Musamu to be seeded for its round 2 financing. That needs to be addressed. The framework has been provided, and if that step is taken, there is another mutual benefit. The more Dr. Mulengas you have, the faster we can cover the country and build the reserves that we need to support our growth and development ambitions. So what I'm saying is, listen, and best practice must be done at home. Policy must transform to deliver this if we're going to get where we are intending to. And with those few words, I'd like to thank you very much, and again, applaud Dr. Mulenga for doing what I fail to do on a daily basis, which is translating the full vision. And I thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for your remarks. Indeed, we have to be disciplined, dedicated, and discerning for us to reap the benefits of this sector. So now turning to our panelists who are here with us this morning, I would like to get your quick reactions from the presentation. So we'll start with Dr. Agatha Mulenga. Your quick thoughts on the presentation, but as you do so, I would like you to comment specifically on the mining tax regime. As Dr. Mulenga said, the Zambian people must benefit from this mineral wealth, and I think the fastest way to do that is to ensure that the revenue that is generated from the mineral wealth is shared with all Zambians. So please just your comment on the presentation and on the mining tax regime. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to start by thanking Zipa for the opportunity to be part of this panel. It's been really fascinating hearing from Dr. Mulenga. In terms of my reactions, he obviously raised a lot of important points. I think what stands out to me is the continuing persistent problem around diversification of our mining sector. As he highlighted from his presentation, we have a diversity of mineral resources, and yet we have established ourselves as a mono-economy where we rely heavily on copper mining. Recent statistics from ZRA, for instance, show that for the first quarter of the year, 95% of our revenues came from copper, with only less than 2% coming from gold. So there's an urgent need to diversify our mining sector base, to diversify our wider economy. And another important mention, I will speak to the aspect of artisanal and small-scale mining because that is my background area. This is an avenue through which such diversification efforts can be undertaken. Gemstone licenses are largely in the hands of artisanal and small-scale miners, and a lot of the other minerals that are coming up in terms of the gold rushes, the critical minerals that were mentioned. And so the formalization agenda with regards to artisanal and small-scale mining is critical. So far, with regards to the revenue perspective you mentioned, the ZRA has highlighted that ASM contributes very little to our government revenues, and we must ask ourselves why. So on one hand, there's the aspect of mining being a business, and yet ASM is also unique in that it's a livelihood activity, it's poverty-driven, and it's about livelihoods. So there's a key need to balance these two goals of artisanal and small-scale mining. How can we make a business case for it and organize the sector in such a way that we have miners who are both artisanal and small-scale, especially the small-scale group, who have access to finance, access to equipment and capital, access to geological information that he talked about. From our engagement with the ASM sector, these are the key aspects that are keeping the sector from contributing to the wider mineral output. And so if we are to have a thriving, diversified economy, and if we want to benefit Zambians, then ASM must be supported in terms of formalization, in terms of state support, in terms of environmental issues. Critical minerals are a key discussion, green energy, but with that comes the environmental degradation, the defacing of the environment. How can the government come in to regularize the activity in such a way that it is taken up in such a way that it doesn't lead to other impacts, detrimental impacts to the wider environment? So in terms of a quick response, I think those are the elements in terms of strengthening the formalization activities. Government has made good steps with the cooperative formation, but how are these cooperatives functioning? Are they really functioning as businesses? Are they going to get us forward in terms of the vision that we see? And in terms of the tax system, we also have seen positive steps there. We have seen the establishment, for instance, in ASM of an ASM unit at ZRA, which looked specifically at the functioning of the ASM sector and seeks to customize the tax system to those particular players, knowing that they are different from the large-scale actors. So can we move forward with that and ensure that even with the tax system, recently in the last budget, we also had a presumptive tax introduced for ASM miners. This is, again, a degree of responsiveness on the part of policymakers, recognizing that, okay, since these are smaller players, how can we simplify tax payments for them? But we'll still need to go a long way in terms of strengthening compliance and strengthening the business operations of these factors and of these entities, and also distinguishing between the business aspect and the livelihoods dimension, because a lot of people go into it out of poverty and in order to find a job. That's what I can say for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your remarks. A very strong call there to support the small-scale miners. Moving on to Mr. Katoto, a quick reaction from you on the presentation, but also if you could comment on the 3 million tons copper production target that we have. So this is 2023. We have 9 more years to 2032 when we are supposed to be producing 3 million tons of copper. We are currently at around 680,000 tons, if I'm correct. So we still have quite a lot to go. Is this an achievable target? What needs to be done? What limitations exist right now?
Thank you very much, moderator. In the first instance, I would like to thank ZIPA for giving me the opportunity to say 1 or 2 things about the future of mining in Zambia. Commendation must go to Dr. Mulenga. He has provided a very good skeleton of all the aspects that will relate to future copper mining in Zambia. And probably I would say not just copper mining, I think we should be talking about a mining industry. Now, in relation to the 3 million tons, what does 3 million tons of copper mean? In the first instance, 3 million tons of copper at 8,000 United States dollars a ton means $24 billion in revenue. Currently, at our 700,000, 800,000, we only have about $6 billion US in revenue. So, we are at 680,000. If we have to go to 3 million, it means we have to develop copper mining, which is about 2.3 million tons in 9 years. If you recall the presentation Dr. Mulenga made, just in terms of exploration, it takes 4 to 15 years. what that level of increase means is that if we include KCM and Mopani, those two potentially can increase production by 500,000 tons by probably 2030. Okay? Because there's a lot of work that needs to be done on those two operating mines. So that leaves a deficit of about 1.8, 1.9 million tons. Now, that level of production requires that we develop 8 big mining companies that will produce about 230,000 tons of copper per year each. This is the equivalent of having 8 Kalumbilas or 8 Kansanshis. That's what it means. My view, and my honest view, is that I think 3 million is probably a tall order by 2032. What probably I could suggest is that perhaps we have an interim program of about 1.5 million tons. That is more achievable. Because like I said, we're at 680, we used to be at 800. Mopani and KCM will give you 500, so that's 1.3, so that's achievable. And in any case, I've been thinking about these 3 million, and I've said to myself, in terms of the mapping that we've got, do we really have the resources that can support 3 million tons of copper? I would propose that perhaps what we need to do is to talk about a mining industry that produces metal equivalent to 3 million tons of copper in value terms, because we're talking about the 24 billion that you're 3 million tons. Dr. Mulenga talked manganese, we've got phosphates, we've got nickel, we've got a lot of minerals, which if we undertook proper exploration, and that is, if you like, airborne surveys covering the entire country, then we should be able to develop other minerals that would give us the equivalent of 3 million tons of copper. For me, I think that is what I think we need to do. Listening to the budget presentation, there's a figure of about $8 million which has been given for geo surveys, airborne surveys, covering just a few select provinces. I think what we need to do as a country is to actually undertake airborne surveys of the entire country so that we know exactly what we've got. We talked about petroleum, we've talked about nickel, we've talked about sugilite. I think we need to know exactly what God has endowed us in this land. I think that's what probably I would say for the moment. If I've got a bit of time, perhaps I can talk about the exploration. Exploration of the entire country will need about $100 million. For that level of funding required, I think perhaps we should take a cue from what Namibia did. Namibia went to the EU and World Bank to undertake airborne surveys of the entire country. I believe the World Bank has shown interest that they could fund this venture. So let's undertake, I think, a nationwide exploration program. You talk about taxation. If I may just spend 1 or 2 minutes on taxation. Taxation is a very interesting subject, and I think all the discussions I've heard so far talk about making the tax regime attractive for the mining investor. I think there's very little that's spoken about making it attractive and beneficial to the host country. And when we look at the metrics that make investors decide on a project, is normally the internal rate of return or the return on capital employed. Okay? Now, that almost seems to run counter to what the governments want, because governments look at effective tax rate. Are more or less on opposite sides. What we need to do is, Dr. Mulenga talked about the G factor, which I think is somewhere very close to the idea that we should make it a requirement. Each company should actually report on what their effective tax rate is on a yearly basis. Because a study was done by a man called Otto in 2002, where he highlighted the relationship between internal rates of return as well as the effective tax rate. And he's created a table which gives the ranges. The internal rates of return in that report were about 10% to about 16%. And the effective tax rates were from about 30 to about 60%. And some of us may recall that in 2008, during the Mwanawasa Makande regime, an attempt was made to create a tax regime that would give an effective tax rate of 47. There were a few problems with that, which needed to be resolved. But unfortunately, rather than resolving those issues, we annulled that proposal and, threw out the windfall tax, we threw out the variable profit tax. We needed to have looked at those figures in terms of being tax deductible. Because then I think we would have gone down to the 47% that was desired. At the time being, that's all I can say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your contribution. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you are taking down your questions, because very soon we'll be moving into our Q&A. For our audience following us virtually, please get your questions ready as well. You can post them and we'll bring them up to the panelists. Moving on to Professor Emmanuel Chanda. Yesterday I had an opportunity to listen to Dr. Mulenga, and he said the three key people you need, and I hope I'm not wrong, he said the explorers who find where the mineral wealth is, then you have the mining engineers who bring the rock up to the surface, and then the metallurgists who I think extract the actual minerals. Then he went on to say that for us to run mining as a business, we need other critical skills. And he mentioned even this morning, people in finance, economists, and a host of all other skills. So you're coming from the School of Mines. What are academic institutions doing to ensure that we provide the requisite skills for us to run our mines as businesses? Because it seems that's something that's lacking. So your quick thoughts on that.
Thank you very much, moderator. And I would like to thank Dr. Mulenga, my former colleague in ZCCM, going back years, for laying a roadmap for the future of mining in this country. I'd like to comment on the capacity in terms of manpower requirements. I do remember in the good old days we had a clear policy on training of manpower for our mining industry. And that's why the School of Mines was established in 1973 to produce geologists, mining engineers, and metallurgists to run our mines. And we can be proud as a nation that program was very successful. Most of the key technical positions in ZCCM and other smaller mines were manned by graduates from the University of Zambia. Moving on in time, we face new challenges. We spoke about the future mining scenarios, meaning that it will be driven by technology, And we are moving away from the traditional mining engineer, graduate, or geologist, because now the trend in international mining is that even mechanical engineers are being converted to understand something about mining, because they do provide that element of mechanization and automation. Computer scientists are being converted to mining so that they can run this sophisticated industry of the future. So coming back to our programs at the University of Zambia, we still offer the 3 disciplines in the School of Mines, but now we are revising the curriculum to include topics such as automation, big data analytics, and artificial intelligence. And we are reducing the duration for these programs from traditional 5 years to 4 years, because that's what it takes on the international stage to produce a geologist or a mining engineer. And I like what Dr. Mulenga commented on, that to understand the business of mining, we need people with the economic skills. We even need lawyers in the industry. So we are working on introducing double degrees. So if you are a mining engineering student, you'll have the option to do another degree, a combined degree in, say, commerce or mine finance. So if the Bachelor of Engineering straight degree takes 4 years, you do 1 additional year, say, in commerce or finance, then you graduate as a mining engineer, come mineral economist or a finance expert. This way we are getting people with the requisite skills to run our complicated mining industry, people who can understand not only the technical aspects of mining, but also the business aspects of mining. And I would like to call upon the industry. This is not something we can do alone. This creation of these new programs, we need to come together to get input from all the stakeholders, from our colleagues in industry, from government. We need to sit together and say, what does a future mining graduate look like? What is a future geologist going to look like? What is a future mineral processing engineer or metallurgist going to look like? We say these are the skill sets that will be needed to drive our industry, and then we can come up with this curriculum to make sure we are efficient. Because guess what? What has happened and where we have gone wrong is, as Dr. Mulenga said, there are people calling themselves mining engineers who have no clue about mining. We need to move away from that and get the right people to run these industries. Now, moderator, if I may comment on one other aspect I really liked, and that is the fact that Dr. Mulenga presented a chart which showed what I call the minerals, different sector streams for gemstones, for base metals, and so on. Now, what we need to do as a country is not to move in there and start digging. We won't go anywhere. We'll be producing a little bit of lithium, a little bit of gold. What we need to do is to develop a strategy for each of these sectors of our economy. That means we need to sit down and develop what I might call the copper strategy or manganese strategy, where we look at all aspects of what is required to develop that industry to maximize our benefits. Because oftentimes we overlook certain things until we find out after 1 or 2 years of trying to do certain things, and we say, gee, we didn't look at the transportation of this resource. So we need to create comprehensive strategies and then execute those strategies going step by step. So thank you, Dr. Mulenga, for laying the roadmap for development of our sector. But there is a lot of work to be done in terms of planning the strategies to move forward, whether it's in financing of these projects. You spoke about foreign direct investment. I like to talk about local direct investment to involve our own people in this sector, to develop the resources, and also to create a database on which we can base our strategies to develop our industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for those remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, we're getting into another interesting segment. That's the Q&A. This is your time to interface with the panelists as well as our keynote speaker, if you wish. So, I know this is a very interesting topic, but I'm going to ask that you limit your questions to at least one and then be to the point. If you have additional questions, we might come back to you in a second round. So please raise your hand if you have a question. Someone will come to you with a microphone, introduce yourself, just your name and where you're coming from, and then go ahead and ask your question. Okay.
Shall I be the first?
Yes, please.
My name is Chewa Chumanya. I'm from Absa Bank. My question is to both Dr. Mulenga and the panelists. There is a target for copper production of 3 million, which we are all singing about. I think even school kids now are aware of that target. Why don't we have a target for value addition? My remote view, not being a metallurgist or mining engineer, not privileged, why can't we get more from the same volume that we are producing at the moment? My understanding is that when this copper goes out there, through value addition, the value multiplied several folds, probably 5 to 10 times. Why don't we focus on adding value to the same 600 or 800,000 that we're producing now and get more value and more employment? And for that to do it, we have to have a target, just like we have target for production of raw copper. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, we have a question.
Thank you. My name is Senior Research Fellow at ZIPA. My question, I think, goes to the panelists. Maybe Dr. Agatha Mulenga can attempt at this. We have seen that the non-traditional mining sector, the mining of minerals like gold and the others that are emerging now, has been choked in bureaucratic processes. We have seen the reduction in the amount of gold that is being produced from the time that we discovered it. The same thing is happening from the gemstones sector. So what do we need to do to move the needle forward? Because I think we are losing value every year that passes with these bureaucratic chokes in the system. Thank you.
Yes, we can have one more question, then we'll have responses.
We have a question from our online participants on Zoom. Chanda Kazia is asking, given the importance of the mining sector to the economy, what strategies are in place to prevent the exploitation of workers and ensure that labor practices adhere to international standards?
Okay, so I think we can get back to the panelists. Maybe on the question on the 3 million target, Mr. Katoto, please, could you respond to that one?
Thank you very much. As I stated earlier, over the last 2 years, our production of copper has actually been going down. The 800,000 we used to have has gone down. This year, it's anticipated that we'll have 80,000 tons, okay? Now, we've been told that there have been operational problems at some of the mines. If, like I said, you have to move from 700,000 tons to 3 million tons, it means you've got a deficit of 2 million tons. 2.3 million tons. Okay. KCM and Mopani can give you 500 million. So if we add the 500 to 700, that brings us to 1.2. We've got 1.8 missing. And like I said, 1.8 suggests that we need 8 big mines equivalent to Kansanshi or Kalumbila, producing over 200,000 tons. I'm not sure at what level of exploration or information we've got to determine that we've got the resources to produce the 3 million tons. Apart from the resource, we also need power, because a mine like Kansanshi or Kalumbila requires in excess of 200 megawatts of power. Then you've got the logistics that are required, the roads, the rail. I mean, right now our roads are, packed with trucks at only 800,000 plus some component of Zairian copper. If we go to 3 million, will our rail system and road systems be able to cope with that? And then we have to think of the ports around the region. I know there's some work on, some regional ports, but I don't know whether they fit with the time frame of 2032. I'm not sure about that. If I may come to the question on value addition. As a country, we're not doing very well, because even on the 800,000 tons of copper, there's only Neocan, the two companies, Neocanth and Zamefa, who consume about 50,000 at the very most, out of the 800,000. And further, when you look at the copper production itself, we've regressed. The production of cathode has dropped so much because our refineries, both at Nkana, rather at Muflira and Nkana, they're not operating at full capacity. So we are selling a lot more of anode and blister copper. And the unfortunate thing is that if it's not cathode, because the reference price for our taxation is based on grade A cathode, that's where you get the full LME price. When you start having materials like anodes and blister copper, you've got big deductions to the extent of almost $180 per ton, okay? Because you've got to think of refining costs, and in some cases you've also got impurity penalties. So we're actually losing almost about $80 million just because we're not producing cathode. Okay? And the further point is that Zambia's copper, when we used to produce good cathode at Nkana, was actually world-renowned, and we used to get a premium on that copper. And that premium was up to about $150 per ton. So that's another $70 million. So without even increasing copper production, we can gain about $140 million simply by sprucing up our refinery operations. And I think that's where the focus should be, that whatever efficiencies we can bring to the table, let's do those before we even think of increasing production. We must have efficiency at all points of our production. I don't know if that has answered your question. Okay.
Instead of laboring to increase to 3 million, which seems to be a tall order, okay, why don't we focus on adding value to the 600 to 800,000 that we are producing?
Okay.
We could become richer without increasing the volume. That was my point.
No, that's fine. I recall at around 2008, ZCCMIH engaged Professor Thompson Sinkala to undertake a study which looked at what materials are imported into the SADC and COMESA regions. And he came up with very, very interesting findings, because it looked at all the materials that we bring into the country, whether they were shapes or alloys. And this business was worth billions of US dollars. But unfortunately, that study was not acted upon. So I suppose perhaps we need to go back to Professor Sinkala so that he can reproduce that report, and probably the ministry and government can look at it. Because it gave a full range of all the products that we import back as copper-laden, materials. So that's a very good point. Thank you for the question.
All right, thank you. So we had a question on bureaucratic processes that are limiting the production of minerals. I'll ask Dr. Mulenga to comment on that. And perhaps you can also comment on the third question, which was asking what strategies have we put in place to protect workers from exploitation in the mining sector.
Thank you very much. The issue about bureaucratic ways disturbing mining of gold and gemstones. From what I was explaining, in mining, the first thing we do is to define a resource and a reserve. Meaning, a mineable reserve, meaning the minerals you've quantified accurately and you know the tonnage and the grade, and then you can mine. The small-scale miner and artisanal mine doesn't have those skills. They will take as nature is. So if you ask a small-scale miner so how much have you got here? He's not able to quantify. As long as every day he goes, he digs, he purifies, he collects, that's all they are interested in. So what the government is trying to do is to say, hold on, we can do it better. Can we get better value by us being able to quantify what we have? A classic example like this northwestern thing and the Pika thing, somewhere people are digging gold everywhere. If you asked anybody, my brother here is the expert, how much did those people define? Nobody defined anything. So what government is trying to do, I'm going back to that issue to say the resources belong to the Zambian people and we must maximize the value. In order to do that, we should allow government space and time to quantify, to come up with mechanism of quantifying. Then they will make it possible for people to do. So it's not a hitch. They are actually trying to help the small scales that they can make more money if they did it the right way. The issue of labor regarding our colleague in Canada, I would like to assure him that I mentioned ESG. The world now, to invest, to do anything, they look at, are you exploiting your labor? Are you using child labor? What they call ethical mining derived product. There's an element now of traceability. And one of the traceability to where the mineral came from, they also check the parameter on labor. Are you underpaying your labor? What laws is that labor? So in our case, Zambia sits very well in terms of formal mining. Formal mining, they follow the labor laws of the country, and you see the Minister of Labor very active and people in Minister of Labor. So that is that. Where the challenge becomes is where you have the small-scale miner, because that's an individual who is panning gold in the village. Who it takes to pan, we cannot go. Thank you. So the issue is that why government have initiative to this thing using batteries or what? Maybe they've run out. Yeah, so I've taken the initiative to try and mobilize and formalize the small scale so that they can be taught the safety, occupational safety, health and environmental standards and abide by that. That's where we are heading to. The whole idea is to develop an inclusive sector where small scale and large.
Thank you so much. We can get another round of questions. I think we had a hand there. Yes, we can start there. And then there.
Good morning, everyone. Elaborate presentation on the mining sector. I noticed from your presentation you stated that we do not have data or information on the minerals that we have in the country. I'm just wondering, where does the number 3 million tons come from? Do we even have 3 million tons of copper in the country? Seeing that KCM currently are just doing about 7,000, struggling but producing about 7,000 tons, and probably once stabilized they may come to about 15,000 tons per month, and Mopani probably less than 10,000 per month. At the time we're producing 800,000 annually, the concentration was copper belt or copper belt, but copper belt is all gone under. And the current 680 is a combination of a copper belt and northwestern Zambia. Meaning if we have to move to 3 million tons, the northwestern should be producing more than 2 million tons. Do we have this reserve in the country? Where do these numbers come from? Thank you.
I'm Dr. Julius Kaoma from Kafue Iron and Steel Integrated Steel Plant. My question is that I do appreciate what Dr. Mulenga has presented, but the highlight for me is that is about technology. How can we indigenize our technology? That's my first question. The second question is about human resources, about education and attitude. He highlighted the point and even said himself that I'm the first Zambian to invest in mining. Where are we, all of us? But the question is that we have to change our attitude. And how can we change our attitudes towards mining or other industry or manufacturing or other sector of the economy? The third one is market. We keep on talking about the 3 million tons of copper by 2032. Here, as a businessman, I'm thinking about consumption and production. If I produce, I have to consume it. And I should not expect somebody else to consume what I produce. The excess of my productions can be consumed by somebody else and I can export it. And you have to be mindful when you're talking about copper. People can get the copper from Zambia. They produce their product, they consume in their country, and they do the recycling. And how that recycling in those countries can impact on our copper production and so on. But my question is, how can we increase consumption in Zambia of copper versus production? Thank you.
Thank you. So perhaps, Dr. Mulenga, you can respond to those questions because they were directed to you. Where are the 3 million tons of copper How can we indigenize technology? How can Zambians change their attitude towards mining? And how can we increase consumption of copper here in Zambia? Microphone.
Where is the 3 million tons? That's why I mentioned the idea of mindset change for Zambians. The idea is that that goal is inspirational. We must aspire. We must dream. Unless there's a dream. So when you are dreaming at night, in the morning, do you check what the dream was doing? You have a dream that I would like to be a big farmer. And in your dream, you have this hectareage, we have this and this. And I know one person I can share who has a dream, who had a dream and he lived also his dream. He's Mr. Katoto. He dreamt to create ecosystem, agro-system, livestock systems, being a metallurgist. And that dream, he has realized it, but he was a metallurgist. So the issue is that when the government says we want to produce 3 million, it doesn't mean it's sitting somewhere there. What it means, can we put our thinking cap on and improve on exploration and find? We shall find. A very good example right now happening in Zambia is cobalt metals. They brought very high-tech technology where you can fast track. You can manipulate your data much better than we've done traditionally. Those are the kind of things. Zambia is open for it's there, it's somewhere else, but that's why we are having our Minister of Mines, Geological Survey, undertaking the national mapping. We will know where the indicators are. Here there are indicators A, B, C. And the investors, both local and external, will go and explore and they'll find. But to ask until we see the 3 million seated somewhere like in a bank, that's when we'll do it. No. We have to start, like my brother, Mr. Katoto, has said. It's a journey. We have started and we are working, and he's given us very good information. We need equivalent of 8 Kalumbilas or Kansanshis. And that's a hell lot of a job, I tell you, for us in mining. Because these old mines like KCM and Mopani, once the issues are sorted out, they are not going to require some years to reinvest, to build, to what. I gave you an example of Konkola mine where you have to drain water before you do. It will be a couple of years. So that's why we must be patient. So things cannot do abracadabra. There's no abracadabra in mining. Mining is about one step at a time. And you have to take baby steps. We are all parents here. We see our young children, babies, learn to walk. Boom, boom, boom. That's what you have to do in mining. Baby steps. I'm not referring to my daughter. Yes, I'm proud. Yes, yes. It's normal for a father to be proud of his daughter, unless you are not a father. Yeah? So the other point, it's my brother from Kafue. We've interacted. He's very innovative. I agree with you with technology. What is going to take us forward is technology. And that's why I said to you, I spent some time talking to cobalt metals. The other group that we can learn a lot from is First Quantum. First Quantum, for those of you who don't know, there were 2 brothers, Matt and Philip. The elder one passed away. It's Matt, Philip. Yes. Mr. Katoto, remember, those people came and saw us at ZCCM in the early 90s, mid-90s. I just want to tell this story so that you understand that these things are doable.
They came, talked to us at ZCCM. To cut a long story short, we availed to them a dump, a rock dump, old dump in Ndola Bwana Mkubwa. They went and looked at it. In that, they found some oxide copper, because in the old days, we did not have the technology to treat oxide copper. They put their heads together. They said they could leach it. So they started buying acid from our acid plants. Can acid plant, they were buying and leaching. And their first production was less than 1,000 tons. Yeah? I'm now doing fast forward. The next thing, as they were doing that, they were looking at exploration. They found a deposit in Frontier on the border between Zambia. They went, opened a new mine, open pit mine. Fast forward. Along the way, they found they got involved in Kansanshi. Now, some of you may not know that some of us, when I was in charge of geology, I was in charge of Kansanshi mine during the ZCM days. Can you imagine Kansanshi mine was rated as SIDO? We used to have SIDO, you remember in the First Republic. It was small scale mine, Kansanshi. People were mining with pick and shovel. We classified, we even put a SIDO unit to mine Kansanshi. The first Quantum brothers took over from Cyprus Ekman, Phelps Dodge. The rest is a story. But how long has it taken them? Over 25 years. So if you take mid-90s, look at their, and because they are very dynamic, very aggressive, very focused, they have, First Quantum is a homegrown, is a Zambian homegrown mining company by two brothers. They are now the largest producer of copper in Zambia. So the issue is that it takes time. So we have an example. We can learn from First Quantum. How did they do? They do very unconventional thing in the typical mining, large scale. For instance, I used to see, sometimes I would meet them, they would gather all their geologists, all their metallurgists, all their mining engineers, and bring them sometimes here in Lusaka. I would meet them here. And that's, what are you doing? Oh, we are thinking the future. I said, hey, this is nice. They were thinking the future all the time. So what I'm saying is that whatever government says we should achieve is inspirational. It says, let's put our heads together, let's work hard. We may not get there, but we would have started the journey. That's the outlook as Zambian is. It's not like Kuskulu where we are going to tick the government, they failed. No, they gave us an inspiration, people, for God's sake. When President Kennedy in America said he wants to put land on the moon by the turn of the century, they did not have NASA. They didn't even know where the moon was. So they gathered everybody, every scientist, everywhere. And in 10 years, America landed the man in the moon. Before that, Russia was ahead of them in space technology. But because they put their brains, they believed in themselves, they were the first to land man in the moon. So what was that said? A small step for man, for him, Armstrong, big step for mankind. So same for Zambia. This government is a small step for the Don government, but big step for Zambia. That's the outlook we should have. So that's the technology. Then the consumption. That's why I talked about industrialization, because if we do industrialization, we are going to create a market, a local market for the products. That's how we deal with that. Then what was the other one? The mindset change is all our job, all of us as parents. You cannot change mindset in a university. Mindset has to be changed in the families. So all of us, 20 million Zambians, I don't know how many of us are fathers in that 20 million and mothers. If I take the ratio of 1 to 3, maybe, 5 million are fathers and mothers. Yeah, and we are very productive, so we have a lot of children. So the mindset change has to start at family, where we make our children believe in themselves, where we value our children, and we tell them that God created you in the image of God. A very good example, sorry, I'll quote some Bible thing. I'm not a preacher, but I will show you. I read this Exodus. Is it Genesis? Where we are told in Christianity that God planned and he created the sea, he created the earth, he created everything, Then at the end he said, oh my God, what a wonderful job I've done. But how am I going to manage this? Because I think he got tired. Then he came up with the idea and said, I must build something to supervise and superintend. But this must be different. This one has to be in my own image. And that's how we are taught by Christianity Bible, how we were created as man. And he made us so unique that we are able to do anything. Because we are in the image of God. We are a small God. So as you walk, remember you are a God. You are a God. Yes. You are an image, a split image of God. So if that's what you are, there's nothing impossible. Whatever you dream, you can achieve. So let's have a Zambia which dreams and believes in itself and achieves. But it has to start at family level. Our institution, and I was very happy, Professor Chanda talked about creating an adaptive education system. You can see we are responding. Adaptive system where people are given the skills. That's what it is. So that's how I can answer those questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are almost drawing to a close of the Q&A, but I see we have one final question. Please go ahead.
My name is Winnie Solo Pikakunta. I work for FQM Country Office as Superintendent Government Affairs. I'm here representing my manager who's not here, Dr. Wene, the country manager. I think mine is more of a contribution than a question. There was among the panelists, there was something that was alluded to which speaks about and responds to some of the questions that are being put across us for us to understand what exactly exists in Zambia in terms of the extractive industry, for us to seize the targets we've given ourselves, to look at what is available for us to attract both foreign direct investment as well as local investment. So I just wanted to share with this August House, which is an opportunity for us as FQM. I know First Quantum has just been given as an example that takes a step forward to ensure that we respond to the government vision and see that we all contribute. So my contribution is basically to call other entities, whether private sectors or different business houses, including those that may feel are not in the business sector, because some of the activities that we need to do, we need to come up with ways to find solutions. So this is about conducting the survey. And it was alluded that we need to do a good survey for the entire country to understand what exists within our country. For us as First Quantum, I'm proud to say that Mr. Mwila is here from Ministry of Mines and who's in charge of the survey department. FQM has entered into an MOU understanding to conduct an airborne survey, which we are doing on the Copper Belt. We've covered Copper Belt. FQM has funded that particular memorandum of understanding to contribute to what we are discussing today. So my appeal, FQM's appeal, is to the other sectors as well and industries to also contribute. If each one of us is making a contribution to these discussions as we speak about them, I think that we will have something that we do. I also believe that as a country, if we start our own activities and contribute something, even when we go to ask for support, for external support, they will see how serious we are, because mostly we ask for help from outside without having done something ourselves. So I thought I'd just share about the MOU that is between FQM and the government in terms of conducting the airborne survey. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that contribution. We have one final question, the last one. I hope it's a quick question.
Thank you very much. My name is Shamputa John from Zambia Chamber of Small and Medium Business Association. We have heard that investment in the mining sector takes a lot of money to do. It requires a huge investment. We have heard that it takes about 15 years just doing exploration. This may not be attractive for many Zambians to get involved in. The people who are already there, the artisanal and the SME miners, those who are already in the system, what comprehensive strategies would be put in place to develop this sector? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe I'll turn back to our panelists. Dr. Mulenga, I think you have a lot of knowledge about small-scale mining. Perhaps you could respond to that question. But also, because we are closing now, I'm going to ask you also to just give one key message from this discussion, because we have the media here. What one key message do you want them to walk away with and impart to the rest? So respond to the question, and then in a minute, just give us one key message.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that question, and it's an important one indeed, which requires a lot of reflection. So on one hand, there's need to understand the dynamics of those in the ASM sector in order to come up with a policy framework that is suited to their condition. As you mentioned, it's a highly capital-intensive activity in terms of mining. It's not just like agriculture. So in the past, there have, for instance, been efforts by the donor community, by the government to support the sector in terms of finance and give loans of up to $5,000, $3,000. And yet you find that because of the capital-intensive nature of the industry, yes, less so with ASM, but still, they still hire excavators. They still need dump trucks, especially for those who are not doing still the pick and shovel way. So I think the first step is to understand the players in the industry, to understand what the hindrances are to formalization, what is keeping them. The aspect of bureaucracy was raised. In terms of bureaucratic processes to getting licenses, bureaucratic processes to paying taxes, what are the limitations there? How can we make our regulatory environment responsive to the needs of these players? But also on their end, they are also not innocent in terms of certain aspects such as smuggling, such as willfully evading taxes. So how can we also sensitize and get people around the table to dialogue and come up with a win-win solution for all the players? So I think in terms of comprehensiveness, that kind of background research, that political will, that buy-in on the part of all the stakeholders is critical. It's hard to come up with a single take-home message from such a rich discussion, but I think on our end, the strong aspiration, the idea of design thinking is something that has impacted me recently. Imagining what the final desired outcome would want to see as a country is, and then working backward. So if right now we are at a place where we are a mono economy, how can different actors in the economy, just like FQM has mentioned, how can we work collectively to develop those backward and forward linkages from mining? How can we diversify the sector in a meaningful way? And how can we do it in such a way that benefits our people and generates tax revenues for our government, but also benefits for the business sector? So that's how I would end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before Mr. Katoto comes in, Please, there's a paper on our tables with a QR code that says scan me. We kindly ask that you scan it. It's an evaluation form. This is very important for feedback for us. Please, you can go ahead with your key takeaway.
Thank you very much. Like I said earlier, Dr. Mulenga's presentation covered all the important aspects that go with the future of mining. But I suppose one could condense all that is said into three subtitles. And I suppose it starts with the 3 million tons of copper. Then we have to talk about exploration, and then the tax regime. For the mineral industry, everything starts with exploration. I know government has put aside some money, like I said earlier, $8 million for the 2024 budget, but I think that's not sufficient. And that's why I was proposing that perhaps we take the route of inviting cooperating partners, the World Bank and EU, like Namibia did. We need 100% mapping of the country. In fact, if we do the mapping, it might even help our small-scale miners because they cannot undertake exploration. But if we are able to do exploration, which perhaps leads to inferred resources, I think those would be very useful targets to start with. My good friend Dr. Moses Banda will recall that Kalumbila, Kansanshi, and even Rumana, those are products of exploration that was done by RST and Dango up to the late 70s. It's just that we didn't have the money to develop those resources, and the technology didn't exist. The grades that are being mined now, it's 0.5%. Our cutoff grade in the heydays was 1%. So you need to move tons and tons of ore in order to produce the copper now. And it's all high tech. So my appeal is that government, I think, should take the initiative and perhaps consult Namibia so that they can assist with whatever process they undertook. In terms of the 3 million tons copper, if you recall, I said something which perhaps may be an idea that could be looked at. I talked about a mining industry that produces metal equivalent to 3 million tons of copper. Metal equivalent. Because you see, we've got nickel, we've got manganese, and the manganese is a very big industry potentially. We've got cobalt, and so many other things. In Serenge, and Isoka rather, and Petauke, we've got phosphates. We could start producing compound fertilizers. So mining should be something that we look at as a revenue generator. We're not looking at 3 million tons for the sake of 3 million tons. That's a means to an end, and the end is revenue generation. So if we can increase our revenue generation from the 6 billion currently to 24 billion, that will help us develop, diversified industry. We need to go into agriculture because I think employment is probably one of the biggest elephants in the room. And only agriculture can provide a solution to employment. Mining is high-tech. The numbers that you look at now are very, very small. It's not an option for employment. Okay. Now, if we've got the resource, the only way we can attract investors, whether local or foreign, is if we've got an attractive tax regime. Okay? And it's sad to say that ever since we canceled the development agreements in 2008, Zambia has had a very, very unstable tax regime. It's been changing almost every year. I think even under the present government, we've had two regime changes. You remember in 2022, we made the Emirati tax deductible, okay? And we lost 3 billion kwacha out of that. The following year, we narrowed the bands of the Emirati and we lost 2.9 billion. You know, those two components alone amount to about $290 million, which we've lost, okay? So we need to make up. When we talk about tax regime, let's just not talk about the investors. Let's talk about the benefit to the country. It must be a balance. And remember, I talked about internal rates of return or return on capital employed by the investors, because they've got the threshold. It has to be above 10%, I believe. Equally, on the government side, there are ranges of what a country should expect in terms of effective tax rate. It's normally, you know, above 34% to about 50%. The effort that was attempted in 2008 was intended to bring up our tax rate from, I think, the 32 prior to privatization to about 47. If you read any EITI reports today, you will note that even though our mining industry in Zambia is about 6-7 billion, what the government is able to take in terms of tax is at most 10%, only $600 million. Now, whether that is a good benefit to the country or not is something that needs to be looked at. Okay? And this is why, if for instance we are not able to get good benefit on government, the tax regime will never be stable. Because there will always be calls for, let's get a bit more because our population is increasing, we need more money for social services and so on and so forth. So I think we need to look at the tax regime once again, one that would be competitive internationally, and it would give benefit both to the investor as well as to the host government. I think with those few words, I beg to stop. Thank you very much.
Just go ahead. Thank you, colleagues. For me, I just like to repeat what I said. Everything that we have discussed here, that we have tried to think about, what we need to do going forward is to develop a national mineral development strategy, which will incorporate all these elements, whether it's energy requirements, it's the exploration to find the minerals, it's the interaction with our chiefs and so on. Anything we can think of, the financing, the royalty regimes and so on, we must develop a blueprint for that development. And we could break it down to sectors, base metals, gemstones, what we call development minerals or industrial minerals. We need to do that, because if we are going to address each issue separately, we will not optimize the benefits to this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for all your insightful contributions. I think the panel deserves a round of applause. Yeah. I would like to thank each one of you that asked questions and everyone else for your attention. I'll hand over now to our Director of Programs.
Thank you. At this point, as we close down, I'll just like to say, just to give a bit more thanks. I think it is well deserved that we owe the panelists one more round of applause. Also, I would like to extend our gratitude as ZIPA to all the guests today. As you can see in the room, we've got quite a number of guests. That's a testament to Dr. Mulenga. That's a testament to the topic at hand, but that's also a testament to ZIPA as an institution for pulling this all together. So thank you all to the guests that are here today, and thank you all for your contributions, as well as to all the ZIPA staff. Thank you for all the work you've done. As I invite our Executive Director to give his closing remarks and to officially close the event, just after he speaks, I would like that we all get ready to come up to the front and have a group photo. So for all those who are yet to go, please don't go, so that we can have a group photo and we can, as Zipper, get to show off just what we've done and pulled off today. So with that being said, I would like to invite Dr. Mpuku to give his closing remarks and officially close the event.
Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm still before 12 o'clock. I think my task is simply to bring these proceedings to a close and not to say much. But I must say that we started off on a geological mining note, and we rose and went into the spiritual realm and talked about all sorts of things. Dr. Mulenga almost became a preacher. Are you a lay preacher, Dr. Mulenga, by the way? It's just spiritual. Some thoughts which come to mind, from all the things that were being said, I remember from James Ngugi wa Thiong'o, a quotation which says, nothing good was born of perfect conditions. In other words, sometimes the journey may look long, arduous, and almost impossible. But there must be a first step. And the first step may be muddy, may be dirty, but where we are going, we must be focused on what we are trying to achieve in the long term. Now, let me also paraphrase what Dr. Mulenga mentioned when he was quoting the man on the moon. You said, Neil Armstrong said, this is one small step for man, but one giant step for mankind. We are looking for inspiration. We don't know where we're going to end up, but we have a sense of where we must go. The steps in between are not very clear. So how do we traverse from this one small step for man into a giant step for mankind? I was looking at a picture of Dr. Mulenga. Yesterday when we had a discussion, he showed us a picture of him in his mine in Mansa, a lone figure in a mine, with a big truck behind him, walking through that. And that struck me yesterday before you even mentioned what you were saying today. Here's a man alone, a man on a mission, walking through this journey. The first person to take this journey, to go into the forests in Wapula and say, I'm going to make a mine. When I asked him, I told Dr. Mulenga when I met him, I said, I can't understand. You know, it's impossible. I mentioned to him, I was being provocative. I said, it's not possible for a man just to go out there and build up a mine. I think you need you need the big guys to do this kind of work. Okay? I knew that you'd taken this journey. And he said, no. He was actually very angry. He says, no, we Zambians can do it. We can do it. I don't know if you remember, that was in Kitwe. I just shook my head that this is not possible. But when I listened to his determination, his commitment to this enterprise, I think it is inspiring. For a moment, I also thought I should also go and get a pick. I tried to do some digging. But it's not like that. It's a question of get the inspiration, get the thinking, make the planning, and start the journey. And there will be pitfalls, there will be failures, there will be downfalls. But it's the passion and the commitment. So, Dr. Mulenga, let me say this. I want your daughter to quote this for you. One small step for Dr. Mulenga out there in the hills of Wapula is one giant step for Zambia. You may accomplish something. where you're going. I'm sure you will accomplish something. But it's not only your daughter who's watching. The whole of Zambia is watching. What you accomplished was an important learning point for this country and for many young people coming behind. So please, I congratulate you on your achievements so far. Please soldier on, be an inspiration to this country. I congratulate you. Thank you. So the last thing I would like to say is that another thing I want to mention, you know, I was also mentioning to Mr. Katoto. Mr. Katoto is my neighbor from Kitwe. I spent 15 years, not 15, 20 years in Kitwe, which is the heart of mining on the copper belt. And I was remarking to him that the level of interaction, as at the School of Business, the level of interaction between the university, the School of Business, and the mining sector was so limited. I never had any strong interaction with the mining, apart from meeting people around, but formally interacting between the School of Business and the mines. It was very limited. We are supposed to have been the custodians of the business knowledge relating to the mines, but that never really happened. This is so there's a tendency, and not only for the mine sector, but for a lot of other sectors in Zambia, of the tendency of working in silos. Okay? But the real progress is in partnership across the sectors, across the different professions, and so on. This is something we must work on. Partnership. Linkages between universities, industry, research institutions. You must not think around the box. So I'm happy that we have managed to bring all of you here, all the experts, the thinkers, all of you, to come and think through this. This helps us chart a direction for the mining sector, but it also helps us chart a direction for the approach we should take as a country. So ladies and gentlemen, it's almost lunchtime. Let me begin by thanking our guest of honor, Dr. Mulenga. We're grateful that you found time to come and join us with your beautiful daughter. Thank you very much. Please give him a hand. When you retire from mining, you should try also as a lay preacher. Let me also thank our panelists. I'll start with Agatha, Dr. Agatha Mulenga. Women first. Thank you very much, Dr. Mulenga, for your contribution. We're also happy that you joined us today. Mr. Katoto, who flew all the way from Kitwe to be a part of this discussion. You know, I had to twist his arm a bit, because when I was speaking to him, I said we were supposed to have got the president of the Zambia Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Kabaya, but he said no, he had to travel out with the president for the business trip, so he suggested that Mr. Katoto take over. So I called Mr. Katoto and said, listen, we've got this engagement and Mr. Kabaya has recommended you. So he says, when is it? So he said, today. 24th of November. And I was waiting and he says, I said, problems. I said, what is the problem, Mr. Katoto? He says, you know, I would really like to come, but you know, 24th November is also my wife's birthday. How do I negotiate that now? Huh? How do I twist somebody else to get him out of this? So I said, no. I understand, but please, this is a national duty. But what we can do, we can fly in from Kitwe in the evening, morning, have breakfast, then we'll do the program in the morning. Then by lunchtime, we'll fly you back to Kitwe so that at least you can spend half the day with the madam. After another further breathing on the phone, he finally consented, said he would come, because he felt that this was an important topic. And we should have this kind of engagement. Mr. Katoto said he retired 4 years ago. In Zambia, we are very good at throwing people off. You've done your job, you retire, and we throw you off. All the skills, the knowledge, the experience, all thrown aside. We have to start from the scratch. We have to get those young engineers, young guys from the School of Mines, for that young man I was talking to catch up with Mr. Katoto. That's another 40, 50 years. So now we're just going to get that experience and throw it in the dustbin and say, we've done with you. We must think carefully about that. The Dean of the School of Mines, we are thankful for stepping in also at the last minute because of the change that we had with Mr. Chilembo. We value your contribution, and we shall continue. You know, we are trying to do a research as ZIPA to look at the mining sector and the mining economy on the Copper Belt. That is the research that we've been trying to formulate. So we need to work closely with the School of Mines. The research should not just be a question of engineering, extraction. It's a whole socio-economic system around the mines. So it requires geologists, it requires economists, it requires sociologists, it requires, somebody was telling anthropology, was that man was talking about anthropology as I was going in. All these thought processes must be brought to bear if you are going to have an impact on the mining sector. So thank you very much for coming. The unsung hero, it's not right, it's not right. I must thank my member of staff, the young lady Malindi Musoni. I think she's also done a great job. And my Director of Ceremonies, Nazia Pando, for also overseeing this process. And let me, don't you think it looks a little bit like Barry White? I see the old people are laughing when I say Barry White, but the young people, they don't seem to know who Barry White is. You know, it's a guy with a big baritone voice. When he speaks, even the whole room shakes. So thank you very much, Nazir. And to everyone who has come, I saw a few people around. Colleague, Mr. Lushinga. Who was Moses Banda there? He's disappeared. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. We hope that we can continue these kind of interactions. It's all in the spirit of promoting public dialogue and impacting the policy space. So we are very grateful for your participation, your questions, and I thank you and Godspeed. Thank you.
As everyone prepares for the group photo, please do remember that we have the feedback forms that you need to scan. There's a scan on the screen, but as well as some of the papers on your table. It is important for us to receive your feedback. So please take time to fill those feedback forms. You just need to scan the QR code. Thank you.